All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are hosting the first of what we're going to have eventually is 4 Rebuilding Our Local Economy webinars that will happen throughout the year. So every quarter, our team, in partnership with member businesses, are going to bring resources and technical support to our broader membership community. And today, of course, as you know, we're talking about how businesses can audit and amplify their digital presence. So first, just to get us started, I thought we could introduce everybody here. So maybe if you want to wave, I know our names don't show up on the recording later, so we know who is who. We have Zach Guy, who's joining us from the Image Shop. He is the digital account manager there. Welcome. And Tyler Dornbus, who's the partner and account manager for Well Designed Studio. And Allie Miller, who's joining as well from Well Designed Studio. She is the account and marketing manager there. So thank you all for joining us and just being willing to share your expertise with the local first community. We're so grateful to have you and so grateful for the work that you do, because it is so important this year to be talking about our digital presence and how to do business online and how to have tools that work well for us. So we invited this squad here for a couple of different reasons. So we know, of course, that in 2020, that we saw so much change in the digital space, and that no doubt our businesses are feeling pressure to keep up with the rapidly changing digital world that we're in. And we had also learned from a December article in the Grand Rapids Business Journal that in 2020, one calendar year, our digital tools experienced an unreal 5 to 10 years of growth. And so that has just rapidly changed how we do business and how we engage online. I can share that article here in the chat for folks who are tuning in. As well on our blog when this is posted. So we just realized from that businesses are dealing with this. How do we make this change? How do we struggle to keep up? I wanted to invite some folks to help us to understand, looking at emerging trends with the digital platforms that we have, understanding if our tools are working for us, and if they're not, how do we build tools that will work for us? So before we really kind of jump into the meat of today's conversation, I just wanted to give a quick overview of how we envision this going. So we're going to have our panelists discussing the digital web presence here in the beginning of the hour. And in the second part of the hour, we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to hold them for that time. But if they're relevant in the moment, we will also do our best to address them if you want to throw those into the Q&A chat there as well. So feel free to take advantage of that feature. We're also going to link resources, conversation, different parts of this to the Local First blog. So we'll have the recording you can watch there, as well as any resources that are discussed here for you to consume as well. So as we get started, I think the first question that I have for all of you as we look at the rapid change that we've experienced, the digital platforms that we've all adopted, particularly in the digital realm, what kind of emerging trends are you seeing in the business sector, either with your clients or at large from this past year?
Yeah, I'll start. I think, and obviously the digital tools thing, I was reading that GRBJ article and thinking, yeah, this is like a direct pipeline into what we've been talking about with our clients and needing to really understand how digital fits in our mix. But one thing that we found a lack of is how do we listen to our customers? How do we talk to our customers? We're so used to having this one-to-one conversation or hearing that feedback in a real environment. But with that gone, it's all digital. How do we effectively listen to our customers? So I think a big thing for us and our clients is finding new ways to listen. And we've done a lot of looking on social media and reviewing the sentiment going on in social media about our clients and ourselves. And that's something we've done in the past, but never really had to lean into as much as we had to last year. But yeah, it's like replacing that in-person one-to-one experience that you kind of took for granted before, and how that influenced your decision making. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat. Obviously the pandemic and having to be separated from the people that you work with, both in the shop and for us, our clients, has been in the same way a huge challenge, the same challenge that it has been for all businesses. So, we thankfully have a type of business that doesn't require, retail space necessarily, and where we can make digital tools work for us. but it's been just like all businesses in the past year, it's been a huge learning curve. How do we, we're used to giving presentations for brands and websites in person and being able to kind of feed off of the people in the room and being able to kind of, feel the emotions running through the room when we're talking to people about what we do. And now we're separated kind of by this digital wall. And we've had to really kind of roll with the punches and figure out, how do we get those kind of emotions and get that feedback in a really meaningful way from the people that we're working with. And I think that we've implemented some digital tools that have improved our workflow, and we've gotten really used to the idea of digital calls and speaking with people and talking to their needs on a digital call. But on the other hand, like every business, new tools have popped up, and in a lot of ways they've improved our processes. And that need to move to a more digital landscape has made us a better business in a lot of ways. And I think that that's what we're seeing in this GRBJ article, that seeing this massive growth in these tools. And when used right, it can be a real boon for the businesses who are, let's be honest, forced to use them. It seems like a downside until they really start working for you. And then it's like, oh, why didn't I do this years ago? And that's kind of what we're seeing. It's a mixture of the good and the bad. It's a mixture of the challenge and opportunity. And I think for us, we've seen it with our clients and we've seen it with ourselves. And so having lived it, it gives us a perspective on it that helps us do these things with the folks that we work with.
Allie, do you have any additional thoughts about emerging trends from this past year?
Yeah, I mean, just on top of all that, with, like they mentioned, kind of this digital wall that's there and listening to our customers, I think I've found too, in terms of, really offering a lot of content to our customers, really adding a lot of value that way. So meeting where they're at and providing even them some tools and some education to kind of help them in whatever sector of business that they're in, or whatever your consumer is, whatever problems that they're facing right now. So kind of like taking all that information and then distilling it into actionable items that can be delivered in a digital way.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I know it's interesting to see the landscape change a bit as we see, especially a lot of business-to-business services come out with a free kind of packet or media kit of things that folks can do moving forward. As well as I like what you guys are describing, this kind of tension between business as a relational space and business as a space that we continue to make efficient. And both are necessary, right? Like both add to the productivity of our work and the way that we work moving forward. And look, first, of course, we talk a lot about relationship as being so much of the backbone of the work that we do here. So it's interesting to see it move online. And of course, we all create processes that work for our business that are unique. But I think that that's a nice segue into the kind of first larger part that we want to overlay is what does it look like to audit those pieces? Of course, when we bring in new processes, new platforms, new tools, we have to figure out how to use those things efficiently and keep some semblance of that relationship going so that our partners know the work that we're doing, our clients know the work that we're doing, and we are communicating effectively with those new tools. So I guess my first question is for folks who are joining, can you give an overview of what a digital audit is and how it can benefit a business? Allie, Zach, maybe that's something each of you are able to speak to.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a number of different things that goes on with an audit, but from a high level, we're really looking at as a consumer. So when we are going to try to find who you are and what your business offers, we are going online and simply typing it in. So if you are an IT service, we'll type that in and we'll see where you pop up. So there's kind of a lens of the consumer and seeing if we can actually find you, see what keywords we use and see if you popped up. But then there's actually the other side of it of once we are able to find you, what's the experience like on your website? Am I able to navigate through your website easily, able to figure out what your solutions are, able to figure out quickly how to contact you or get a quote? And then the other element of that is the social media side of it. Social media is a really good tool to validate, who you are. It's more of your personality. So investigating and seeing, are you active on the platforms that you should be active based off your audience? What content are you sharing? What's your reach? So kind of taking all these things into account and then seeing how you're converting. Do you have a good conversion pipeline? Kind of going back to those forms that you build out. You know, do you have a blog that's allowing them to have a call to action at the bottom after you give them some really good information? So there's a lot of layers to it that we utilize to be able to see, you know, what is your competitive landscape and where do you fit in that? Yeah, so that's a basic overview of that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Allie. It's putting yourself in the customer's shoes and or the client's shoes and putting yourself through that process of what do I see if I know something or nothing about your business? What am I able to find out and really synthesize in a quick way? And you kind of said, I think you said customer experience. That whole CX thing has been a buzzword this past year for a lot of us, I think, because that CX has changed. It's now gone mostly digital. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of the 5 to 10 year advancement from a lot of our clients is like, oh, we had this projected out 5 years from now, but we got to do it now. And yeah, that customer experience thing, I think, I don't know if you've all seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
In a way, we're almost being trained or conditioned to interact with digital things in a certain way. And if I'm expecting one thing and getting to your website and not getting what I expect, that could be a bounce, or that could be not a conversion. And now I'm already getting into jargon, but it's a way for me to not connect immediately with your business. So I think a marketing agency doing an audit for you is a great idea, simply because it puts someone in that position who is knowledgeable with what the competitors are doing, B, knowledgeable about best practices, but C, probably not totally knowledgeable about your business, and coming at it from a fresh perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it sounds like really as a whole, what businesses are able to do when they audit platforms is really bring that third-party perspective. Like if someone knows nothing or a little bit about you, what can they expect if they're coming to your site? Where can they expect to buy from you, use your product, use your service? And that comes down to looking at it from that outside perspective. Very cool. So knowing that and knowing that 2020 was kind of this whirlwind of change and adaptation for folks, especially Zach, as you mentioned, when people have those 5 to 10 year plans, and rather than implementing them over 5 to 10 years, we are implementing them much sooner than anticipated. What is it that businesses need to be doing as they're beginning to kind of catalog the changes that they've made and the existing tools that they have?
Yeah. I think it's not just a set and forget type of thing. You know, like if I need to, and I'll just take Facebook, for example, everybody's got a Facebook. If I've got to have a Facebook account, it's not just I need a Facebook account. It's what's my Facebook account doing for me? What are my results? What am I expecting? And what am I getting versus what I expect? And I know analytics and analysis isn't everyone's strength, but a basic like benchmarking tool, you know, if I put out, or if I want to start this e-commerce platform to sell my plants, and last year around March, I was getting 40 purchases a month for my plants, can I expect that same out of this marketing or out of this e-commerce platform? And if my plants don't sell at the same rate they were, is my platform broken? Or is something about the way I'm communicating with my clients or my customers not being as effective as I was last March? Or is it just because people don't want to buy plants in March online, you know? But I think understanding what you want out of something before you go into it, and then constantly reevaluating that and seeing if, am I getting what I'm expecting out of this, and retooling from there is a huge piece of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think to build on Zach's point a little bit too, he had mentioned that, you know, everybody has a Facebook page, and, you know, the question is, what should that Facebook page be doing for me? I think a lot of the deeper questions that we tend to ask, that a lot of folks when they're working on their own don't ask, are, is this something that actually should work for me, right? I think there's a lot of conventional wisdom. There's a billion blogs out there about marketing your small business. There's a million books out there that you could buy about marketing your small business. And for the most part, most of them have the same sort of advice. And it's this sort of just conventional wisdom that, you know, you got to do all the social platforms and you need to be everywhere. And it's mass media and these sorts of things. And I think that we like to challenge the idea that that conventional wisdom has any value. And I think that, you know, do you need a Facebook? Maybe, maybe not. Do you need Twitter? Probably not. Do you need LinkedIn? Depends. Are you B2B? You know, I think that it's one of those things where you just, people kind of look at this sort of blanket approach and, you know, this sort of like, hey, I read a few blogs and they said X, Y, and Z, and let's just give it our all. And that social is mass media, you know, I think that all those things are generally wrong. You know, it's better to choose one platform, stick to it and do it really well than to choose 5 platforms and do all of them poorly. It's better to have, you know, there's a great article by Kevin Kelly from years ago called 1000 True Fans. And his idea is that you don't need a mass market in order to make mass profit. And so if you have 1,000 true fans who are willing to purchase the things that you do, just about everything you do, the premium products, the regular products, they buy into what you're selling completely. That's really all you need to make a remarkable business. And so our idea with social is whether you have 300 followers or 300,000 followers, it is one of those things that if you do it right, you can make it work for you. And I think that a lot of people get into like, there's a lot of things that are spouted as common knowledge that when you really dig into them don't make a lot of sense. And I think to Zach's point, Zach kind of said that where, you know, everybody has a Facebook page. Should it be working for you? How should it be working for you? And I think that's one of the things that a digital audit gets into, in addition to what should I be doing with these channels? It's yes, what should I be doing with them? But moreover, should I be doing them? Mm-hmm. And I think that it can save you time. It can save you money when done properly. And you don't have to be spread so thin in terms of trying to manage all these channels. Because when it comes to social, especially, the #1 small business problem is consistency. It's being able to be on the channel consistently, to respond consistently and quickly, to be a person who's there, because people aren't on your social channel to get mass market messages blasted out to them. They're there to connect with your brand. Mm-hmm. And when you realize that, and when you really dig into it, it's just so much better to look at it as a person-to-person thing rather than a sort of one-to-many thing. So that's kind of the thing too that you can get from something like Zach is talking about, is that really deep analysis of, should this be working? Why isn't it working? And is it worth making it work? You know, is there something there? Is there any there really? So that's kind of another thing that we look at as well, is that deep analysis of, does this actually make sense for you? Is there a better way that we can approach this? And is it one that's perhaps a little less conventional or less common sort of wisdom?
I think that's a fantastic point, Tyler, because we're seeing a lot of people transition their expectations of things like social or certain channels. Is maybe this isn't a sales or a lead gen tool. Maybe this is my customer service tool because it's ubiquitous and everybody's got it. Yeah, just reframing how you approach something from the get-go can change how what you get out of it.
Yeah, we've been installing a lot of Facebook Messenger-based chat widgets on people's websites.
Yeah.
Everybody's got Messenger. It's super easy to use. Yeah. And it's like one of those things that, like, instead of paying $50, $60, $100 a month for intercom, you can do it through Facebook Messenger. And it's there, it works, it's great. And yeah, I think to your point, Zach, that yeah, if you look at these tools and look at them and kind of flip the conventional wisdom on its head, you can save a ton of money and have something really effective.
Yep.
Yeah. Which, that is a huge question I think a lot of businesses are asking, is oftentimes there is this idea, and I know we're going to jump into this a little bit further down the line, but I think often there is this perception that to be online is a pretty expensive endeavor. And you're right, there are lots of ways that we can have space online that are low cost, no cost, and still achieve those end all goals. So I feel like I heard a few different things from that, is that folks really have to understand like what platforms they're using and why they're using them, what their end all goal is for those. So that kind of overview of who are we looking to, you know, understanding your customer and where they are and how we're using those tools to get to them. And then also just mapping what those things are, right? That kind of longevity of, this is how we're going to use it. This is how it's going to adapt over time. This is how we're going to use this platform or channel to make this plant March sale happen, if it should happen in that time frame, to your point, Zach. So yeah, interesting to see how those pieces have changed. And two, to even bounce back on, Tyler, what you had mentioned before as far as relationship and keeping relationship existing via things like Facebook Messenger widgets on your platforms. If that is an easy way to keep relationship or communication between you and your consumer, to put that on there to lower no cost way. That's awesome. I think another question, and if there are other thoughts, please feel free to interrupt me. But another thing I think in this auditing kind of realm that folks are asking a lot is, how do I know that this tool is working for me? So we talked a little bit about that already, but even far beyond that, I think when people are asking a question like, how do I know if this is working for me? They're often asking a question like, how do I know that my business is being seen? How do I know that my product could be sold here or my service could be sold here? So how would you kind of help address a business, help a business address that question?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because when you get into digital tools, I mean, like if you're in a physical space, or if you're receiving phone calls or emails from new clients or, growing accounts, that's a very real feeling and you know what you're getting. But in a digital space, every platform's got their own analytics and their own numbers, and what do those numbers mean? And I don't have time for this. And that's a big question. So I think, especially when we do a digital audit, we try and break that down into a sensible, a sensible understanding of what I'm getting. Our audits give like basic grades, 1 through 5 ranking, because maybe you don't know how your bounce rate should relate to your click-through rate among users in the segment of 45 to 50-year-olds in, Hawaii. I don't know. But that's a real big thing. I think one of the easiest ways is to plug your business or your organization into a simple tool that can give you a lot of all-in-one pieces. And a big tool that has become a more important tool, and it's a free tool, is Google My Business. And Google My Business is a great way to understand how much traffic you're getting. It does tie into your phone calls as well. So how many phone calls am I getting? It'll tie into your reviews too. So you're doing some customer listening at the same time. One of the other side benefits of Google My Business is that you're able to kind of blast out information in a mini, I don't even call it a mini website. I don't know a good term for this. It's like a micro website almost, like if I'm searching on Google Maps, or most people are on their phones, let's be honest. If I'm searching for a place to eat on Google Maps, I'm going to get a preview of that location right on the map results. So I don't even have to click through to the website. And I think Google is going in that direction too, is they want to provide all that info right on Google when you search there. They don't want you going to their website. They can't serve ads on your website, right? So I think Google My Business is a great tool for kind of that all-in-one listening, presence, evaluation type of tool. And it's a free tool. If you don't already have it, I highly recommend you jump on Google and sign yourself up for that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's one of those tools that is kind of a must-have. We talked about, all the different social platforms, whether you should or should not be on it, but Google My Business is such an easy way to get your name out there, especially in terms of reviews, because people love seeing your reviews. I mean, that's another benefit of like a Facebook, that you can get, customers love you, get that review. It's a great validation piece, but Google My Business is just upfront right when they search, and you'll be listed with probably some of your other competitors. So getting as many reviews as possible so that you rank higher and higher is always great. But that is a perfect tool. And just the analytics on the backside too that you can get is so valuable too, with understanding who are you talking to, and may actually help inform what platforms you might want to use and social media platforms you might want to use moving forward. So
we refer to this internally as owning the decision point. And so I think that what Google is trying to do is effectively own the decision point. And so they know that 90% of searches go through Google, and they're taking essentially these kind of rich pieces of data. And this goes for the Google My Business side. When you Google, say, hey, restaurants near me, and it gives you the list within the map, and you have all the info there. You can click through to the website, to the menu. You can hit a button to go to the column. But it also goes for every other kind of data as well. So like Zach said, Google is going to work to own more and more of these decision points on the web. And so getting in now is the best thing that you can do, because they're not going in the opposite direction ever. They are going to continue to own more of the decision point, and you need to be there. That said, we still encourage people to think about their website as the hub of their communications. So a website, even though Google owns a lot of that kind of decision point real estate, it's still really important to understand that a great website, something that works for people, is a great way to kind of understand what's our impact online. Because if you use your website in kind of a hub and spoke model with the rest of your communications and marketing, you can get more or less of a sense of what is working, what your kind of throughput is, what your average conversions are across all the platforms by seeing what goes through your website. Even if you also sell products, through social channels, even if you have some other kind of places like third-party channels that you sell product through, if you're a product-based business, your website is still that kind of center point where everything radiates out of. So having those analytics on the website and being able to understand those analytics, what does bounce rate mean? Why is it important? What is a conversion for me? Is it someone filling in a lead form, or is it someone buying a product? All of those things are really important. So most of this kind of digital understanding is that it very much is that 101 level. You don't need to get crazy deep in order to be really effective. We have a client we've worked with them for, I don't know, about 12 years. And they're great. We do their website. We do, help them with kind of anything digital design that they need, but they manage all of their marketing. They manage all of their kind of analytics on their own. And they've been able to grow this business, 30, 40% year over year through the simplest understanding of their analytics. Who's coming? Where are they coming from? Should we double down on that channel if they're coming from a certain refer, or if they're coming from a certain social channel? And then what do we do to kind of turn more of these people into conversions? And in this case, it's buying a product from these folks. And so it's one of those things that it also, like, you can hear folks like us who do this for a living talk about this all day. And there's all these ideas about, here's these tools you should use, here's these approaches you should understand. But really, when it comes down to it, that 101 level, if you understand it, you can do so much of this and save so much money on, consultants' fees and things like that. And again, not to tank the business over here, but I think that I think that we get people who they want a deeper understanding. They want to go kind of more deeply into the analytics. They want to create more traction, or they want to get it off of their books and just say, hey, I've got a business to run. Can you guys please handle this side of it? But I think that, if you're looking for a way to get into this on a really cost-effective way, knowing that 101 info and, doing an initial audit, which can kind of give you some of those basic things, and then following it up with your own research, your own understanding, it can take you a big part of the way there without having to drop thousands and thousands on consultant fees.
Mm-hmm. That's huge. Yeah. And I think, Tyler, what you're mentioning too is a great segue into the next kind of portion that we want to talk about, which is amplifying either what we have or what we want to create so that we can use those channels well. And knowing, of course, this kind of massive like adoption that we've seen, this rate of moving to e-commerce platforms. People are looking at what the most effective marketing tools are. And so I think, Tyler, you've already kind of begun to speak to this. But when we think about the tools we've adopted, the things that we have, and the ways in which we either create those goals to move forward, what, from all of your perspectives, what would you say are some of the best marketing tools that are out there right now for businesses? So maybe that's Google My Business, that's understanding your plan like we've talked about. What other pieces really make a whole brand approach work for someone, or help people understand how to most effectively use what they've either adopted and or before they've adopted something? What is good to know before they adopt something?
Yeah, I think that this is one that I feel really strongly about, because at Well, we try to take a whole brand approach. We try not to let ourselves kind of get too entrenched in any particular area or think that something is kind of too old school to work. The truth of the matter is that a poster on a telephone pole can be your most effective marketing channel. It's as simple as that. I mean, what we found at Well is we're a digital studio. We work primarily in the digital space, but our most effective marketing channel has by far been old school PR. picking up articles in the business journal and, you know, getting in these papers where decision makers are reading stories. And we've had a ton of that in the last year, and nothing has helped us grow more than some of those stories that we've picked up. And I think that's when I say we go for that whole brand approach, and that's kind of our perspective on it, is that this is a weird time. There's no question about it. And we've had to really lean into these digital channels. But the truth is that it's not forever. There will be people back in your stores. There will be people physically in your space. There will be people walking around the city again, enjoying themselves in big groups, going to Festival of the Arts instead of the virtual arts festival. And, you know, that's the thing, is that we have to know that this is, one, it's impermanent. And we can make some of those shifts towards the digital world, but we also have to understand that, like, a whole brand approach looks holistically at everything that you can do in the physical space, in the virtual space, you know, in media, and some of those tactics that right now seem really old school and like, do they even work anymore? In 4 months, they're going to be back in force. And the truth is, they probably still work right now. So it is one of those things that we always encourage people to think holistically about their brand touch points, about what they're doing, and not to get too stuck in one set of tools. That said, if we're thinking about the digital realm, Google Analytics on your website, know what people are doing and know what it means. Zach brought up Google My Business, which is 100% something you should be using. Get yourself Buffer or Hootsuite or another social scheduler. It will make your life infinitely easier. For $10 a month or something like that, you can schedule out your social posts, do them all in one big batch, and just forget about them for the most part until the, you know, engagement starts rolling in and you want to talk to people. Those are, for me, for any business, those are the 3 big tools that you can do. And then have a basic understanding of social advertising. All of the social algorithms have been tuned over the last few years to absolutely destroy your organic reach. And organic reach just means the people that, when you post your post without a paid boost, that's the people that it reaches just by itself. It doesn't matter, you know, we have pages with thousands and thousands of followers where they post something without boosting it on Facebook and it gets 7 reach, 10 reach, you know, and that's by design. Facebook wants you to pay for boosting. And so at some point, it's Facebook's world. We all just live in it. And so you kind of have to just say, hey, $20 a week, we'll boost these posts, we'll get some better reach. Understand the basics. How do I do some really basic post targeting for simple boosting just to grow that reach and grow the followers and grow people who are engaging with you? It doesn't have to be like a mind-bending equation about, now, how do I target this super specific group? You know, those sorts of things. Just the basics will do. So I think that's the #1 piece of advice that we can give for people who just want to make this work for their businesses. Go for the basics. Those 4 tools will make you go really far before you need to call someone like us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a really interesting point too, Tyler. You know, a lot of these social platforms are free to us as consumers, but they're also businesses, right? So to play the game a little bit, it's important to invest in that, which brings it all back to your business. Any other thoughts on the most effective marketing tools for businesses right now, Allie or Zach?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many great tools out there. And I think what helps it not be so overwhelming is understanding your audience, which I think has been a common theme in this conversation. You know, if you know that your customer is really going to respond to a certain platform, that would make the most sense to boost on that platform. Don't worry about anything else. You know, if they are, you know, they love newsletters, maybe getting an email platform to be able to send out a monthly newsletter so you stay top of mind for your customers could be really great. So I think it really, hopefully, feels less overwhelming once you really define that audience. And as Tyler explained, you know, getting that strong following, even if it's 100 or 1,000 or however many, you know, all the tools that he mentioned are fantastic. And, you know, I would only add to maybe some email marketing or some type of CRM for your sales and marketing channels integration would be really great. Kind of just depends where you're at with things, but I say start small and then build from there and get really good at those tools and then expand on them. It can feel so overwhelming. So just starting with a few things and seeing if it works and test it out, I think is the best advice I would give.
Yeah, I think we talked about an email list before too in one of our prep discussions for all this. And I think the common wisdom for a long time has always been money's in the email list. This is your most avid supporters who sign up for an email or sign up to get emails from you. So tap into that and get the money from the list, right? But again, Ali said it, you gotta know your audience. You gotta make sure you're not blasting people. I think that's where a marketing firm can step in and help you. Like Tyler said, at a very base level, you can definitely do a lot as a business owner with a minimal amount of time. We talk a lot with our clients or prospective clients about, do I need a marketing person or do I need a marketing firm? And the costs there can kind of equal each other. You know, like, do I need to bring someone on to manage all my social media, or is that one person, or is it better for me to spend this money with a firm, with a team of people who can get a little bit more done or come at it from a different perspective? And I think that's been a common conversation point. But that email list is still working for you folks. If you got emails, we can leverage that and get you business and leads. We have a cannabis client that we work with where we didn't expect a lot from email, but we decided one day to drop in that collector widget on the website. And in 3 days, we had 5,000 emails, which we did not expect at all. And then we were like, great, now we have a problem to solve. We got to figure out what we're going to do with this email list, right? It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
And those opportunities are still out there. Those old school, it sounds weird to say email's old school, but those older types of ideas are still very valuable.
Tried and true. Maybe we can dig down on that a little bit further, because I think so aside from looking at your tools, platforms, how to audit and amplify them, I think a lot of people want to know, like, what makes a quality communication? So if you're using email, if you're using social media, whatever the platform may be, how do you know if that is quality? How do you know if it's reaching the right person, and or that if it does reach the right person, it's providing them the value and information they're seeking?
Yeah, I think.
Sorry.
Go right ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, in terms of email specifically, I always like to look at it as talking to somebody personally as much as possible. The more personalization, the better it's going to go. We've all received those really spammy emails that you're almost a little too afraid to open up, with a ton of, different links and stuff like that. So as much as possible, making sure it's conversational. Obviously, have it the tone that makes sense for your business. If it's a B2B business, it'll be a little bit more formal or whatever it looks like. And then, there's so many ways to measure success with email, which is really great. You can look at how many clicks, how many opens, and that can help you really figure out what your audience is really in terms of like the content that you're sharing, what they really like and what they want to hear more of. And so I think it's something that you can, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of A/B testing. You can do that in email, which is really great. And I really recommend it, because as you're sending emails, you should be continuing to learn what they want to understand more of. And there's a lot of great ways to do that. So that's what I would first and foremost in terms of recommending is personalization and understanding what they want to hear and learn about.
Yeah, we had a client, just as a real world example of that, we had a client, that same one that I mentioned before, they provide services for self-published authors, and we switched them from a newsletter style email to a personal letter style that even had a little signature of the business founder on the bottom. Each one is like just a personal sort of bit of advice, information from her to them. And we saw open rates increase 50% overnight. And it can make a huge difference. People get tons of emails. If you're J. Crew and you're selling a visual idea of a person's life, by all means, make the big image emails, have the lovely photos, have the beautiful text treatments. If you're Well-Designed Studio and we're writing our clients and our prospects to say, hey, here's what's going on, we have this bit of advice for you about, doing a digital audit, write it like a letter. People want to know that you're talking to them, and that signals authenticity. And for most small businesses, that's what people are looking for. It's that personal connection.
Yeah, if you haven't picked up on our theme yet, it's know your audience and talk to them directly, right? And I think that's something that we as marketers kind of take for granted, because it's literally our job to know that and understand that customer business relationship. But if you haven't dove deep, gone into that very deeply, Uh, that might be something you'd want to, talk to a marketing firm about before you go down that path. You can absolutely execute a plan, but that strategy and knowing your audience is something you might want to prepare from the get-go. One thing that we're hearing a lot of clients ask about is SEO and how do I rank on Google? And unfortunately, that is a different way of talking to your customers than like what we're talking about with like talking to them directly as a person. So you really kind of have to balance those two things, because if you've ever read SEO copy that's written to rank on Google, it's pretty dry and very boring and very Ernest Hemingway sentences that are short and to the point and full of the same keywords. So knowing where your customers come from and how to leverage them or where you want to go into can help you decide how you talk to your customers. But that's another thing that maybe a little higher level than 101, but once you have those basic things under you, you can run with that pretty effectively.
Yeah, I love hearing this, because even as I hear you guys talking about this, I think about the kind of communications that I love to consume, and they are the ones that I feel like they align with my value, or they've said something that it's almost like unspoken that I wanted to hear from them, right? And I think that's so interesting, because you juxtapose that with kind of the beginning pandemic experience where everyone was sharing their pandemic protocol, right? And I was getting newsletters from every email I've ever subscribed to about their pandemic protocol, which is very important. We need to share, of course, what our safety practices are and how we're navigating the season. But, those things, when you're being overwhelmed with the same kind of content from every business you've ever subscribed to, is a lot for a consumer, right? And I think a lot of people saw unsubscribes come through that time, even though we're communicating things that are really important for our consumers to know when they want to support us or when they want to support a business they really care about. So I can feel a lot of excitement, at least for myself as a consumer, around that kind of content,
Yeah, I was just going to say, this totally popped in my mind when you were saying that, but one of my favorite things to receive from a business is like a "we miss you" type of communication. It's like, if I haven't interacted with your business or opened an email or been to your website in 6 months, for some reason getting that like, "Hey Zach, come on back, we miss you," like touches me. And I know it's probably, going out to like a couple thousand people at the same time. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, they miss me.
Yeah, it's personal. I love that.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's always good. There's two things that when you're doing anything like what we're talking about, the two kind of key things that can get you started. First of all, comparables. When we talk about comparables in our business, we just mean who's doing it right. When you're looking at emails, I always send people, there's an author named Ramit Sethi who writes personal finance books. And his emails are the single most dialed, perfect for his audience. The writing is spot on. The way they're constructed is spot on. They produce like crazy. And like Zach mentioned, he has these automation workflows that if I haven't opened an email in a while, I get one that says, "Hey, Tyler, I see that you weren't really interested in my series on X. Maybe you'll be really interested in what I have to say next, which is Y." And so, these things can, you're getting, again, like Zach said, beyond the 101 level with automation workflows. And that's why, companies like ours exist, is to help you kind of do some of those more complex things and help you work through some of those ideas. But again, if you want to know as a basis, kind of where to go, I would say find people in your space who are doing something you like, or something, we call it, again, in a dorky way, analogous inspiration, which is a very sort of like San Francisco, Silicon Valley way of saying stuff that looks good that you like. But yeah, I think the other side of it too is, don't be afraid to try things. You have to try and fail with things in order to find what works. I talked about this client who we switched from the newsletters to the personal letter style, and we saw such great results. That was after trying 5, 6, 7 other email forms that were kind of like, yeah, they work okay, but they're not amazing. But once we found the one that worked, we've been doing it for 4 years with them, and it just makes sense. And I think that's the thing too, is with digital tools, you have an opportunity to try and fail for basically no money. So if you want to try 5 different email formats across 5 weeks, more power to you. It doesn't cost you a cent. It just costs you a little bit of your time. If we were to try 5 different billboards for you, it costs $500 every time we replace that billboard, plus the massive fee that we pay just for the privilege of putting something on that billboard. So you have an opportunity to do kind of these like, they're almost like sort of punk rock approaches to marketing where, you know, when I used to promote shows back in the punk scene back in the day, a long time ago, we used to just try like this flyer over here, that flyer over there, see which ones seemed to work, which one people responded to, and then we kind of replaced the ones that didn't work with the ones that did. And it was one of those things where you try different art, you try different words, and you see what comes up. And this gives you an opportunity to just play with things until they work. And not a lot of platforms give you that opportunity, but digital has really given you that opportunity. So as long as you know how to read the metrics and read the results, you're golden. You can just try it until it works.
I love that you brought that up because it is so much of what we do in terms of testing, and definitely not being afraid. And I think social media is another great place to test as well. You know, LinkedIn is supposed to be this professional platform, but every day I see, you know, pictures of puppies and babies because it's working. It's becoming more social. So, you know, feel free to explore that. And I think on top of that, explore other industries. I think a lot of times people will look at their competitors and see what they're doing, and I think that's a great benchmark, but I love looking at other industries and encouraging people to do that because it can do something very different and make you come across as unique, but still part of that industry. So I always like to save, anytime I get an ad or an email or anything, I save it just because it spoke to me, it inspired me, and maybe I can use it for a client one day. So I think that's a really, really good way to approach it.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it sounds like there's kind of this almost dual piece that's going on, right? In that there's so much available to you and you can take some risk to try things out, and that's low cost. And also, oh, nuts, I lost what I was going to say. There's like the, oh, well, maybe it'll come back to me and I'll share if it does. So with email and these tools that we have and noting that you can try a few new things, and also, the longevity, that's what I was going to say. It's like this dual piece of creating new, you know, maybe slightly risky different types of things that you're doing, and doing them over a long period of time so that you're testing out what becomes exciting for your consumer basis, but then continuing to do those until the long haul. That's what I wanted to say. So, you know, knowing that about email and knowing that about how our tools are changing, I think the last kind of question that I have for all of you, and we touched a little bit about this earlier when we were talking about price and being in this digital realm. But I think when people are looking at, especially businesses who maybe didn't have a presence on the web before, or now are considering those e-commerce sites, and they think about going into that space and what's available, and those can be pricey endeavors, and maybe often a barrier for businesses to get into those spaces. What ways can businesses begin to develop or update their websites that are affordable for them in this kind of time, given, in fact, that we're in an economic recession as well?
Yeah, now's the time. There has never been more options for building a website than there is today. 10 years ago when Squarespace started, it was a completely novel idea that you could go on, use a drag and drop editor to easily combine a blog and a website into one. They were way ahead of their time, and now the market is just absolutely lousy with Squarespace style businesses. There is also a ton of different models. You know, if you work with a traditional firm like the Image Shop or like you'll generally pay a flat fee, and that flat fee is going to run in the thousands of dollars generally for, you know, a basic website, and you could easily get into the tens of thousands for more complex you know, application style or complex e-commerce websites. On the other hand, you can go to Squarespace, and for $49 a month, you can build yourself a solid site that's probably going to work for 60–70% of what you need. Now, there are some caveats to that, obviously. The difference is if Well or the Image Shop builds you a site, you own that site. That's yours forever. It's part of your brand. It's part of your assets. Whereas if you build it on Squarespace or on GoDaddy or on Wix or Weebly, they own that site. You don't. So the second you stop paying them, that site's dust. And you have to make sure that you're cognizant of that before you rely on a service like that too much. And before you build into a service like that too much, because you will be paying them for the rest of your natural life if you want to keep that site. And so, you know, it's kind of, you know, also obviously when it comes to websites, you can DIY a website in the same way that I can change the oil on my car if I really want to. But the truth is that if I'm going to screw around with something as expensive as my car, I probably want to take it to a pro. And I feel that way about websites. I've talked a lot about DIYing on marketing. When it comes to websites, I am not a super huge fan of DIYing, just because you get an inferior product, you put a ton of work in. I can't tell you the number of people that we talk to on a weekly basis that are like, yeah, I have a website, I built it on Squarespace. We're like, oh yeah, let me take a quick look at it. Like, no, please don't take a look at it, you know? And if you feel that way when you're telling your potential marketing company about that, think of how your customers feel when they go to it. And I think that this is one of those areas where I feel like DIY is widely spread, and it has gotten infinitely better in the last maybe 5 years. But to me, it still is, a website is one of those places that is really worth investing in. And whether it's through a non-traditional service like Featherlite, which we run in conjunction with Well, or whether it's a traditional kind of website service, a website builder like the Image Shop, like Well, you know, whichever route you go, that's an area where I think that a pro is indispensable. And I think Zach will probably agree with me on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much room to be effective on a website that if you're not at least leveraging someone in some way who knows all those best practices and knows the best way forward, I don't want to like put a bunch of fear into everyone, but you're probably missing out on a little bit, right? So, but then again, I mean, some of the biggest, most effective firms that I've seen come out of Silicon Valley have the worst websites that are nothing but, I got my degree from Berkeley and blah, 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 pay me to tell you what to do. So I think it really does start off, to go back to the beginning of our conversation, is what are you expecting to get out of this? What do you want out of this? And do you feel like you can handle that yourself? But yeah, you can definitely do a quick, cheap website these days and be very effective with it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing this kind of insight with our membership basis and this expertise. I think if folks have questions, certainly put those in the chat now. And if you have questions on the back end, once we're posting this online too, we certainly can direct you to the resources here and or those folks to help you navigate some of those questions. But before we go, I know that both Well Design Studios, Featherlight, the Image Shop, y'all offer some really great services for our Local First members. So I just really want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about those. And then, as I mentioned, as we wrap up here too, we will post this live on the Local First blog so that folks can go back and check it out and get all the resources that we discussed here today. So just want to turn it over to you guys though to share a little bit more about the things that you can provide our member businesses right now.
Yeah, kind of relating to this conversation, we just published a blog today on audits. We recently did a round of audits with Downtown Grand Rapids Incorporated. If you go to our website, theimageshop.com, we have that blog available. Kind of shows you the process we followed. And I think 2021 for us is the year of data, and totally flies in the face of everything we said today. But hiring a marketing firm who can really leverage data, I think is where a lot of businesses need to go to grow to the next step and really understand what happened last year. So that's kind of our focus.
That's how you know the Image Shop is good, is they have a time-based and completely subject relevant blog that went up on their website at the same time. That's how you know they're good at what they do. So on the Well side, like we're similar to the Image Shop. We're obviously a full service firm. We work across kind of the whole spectrum of marketing and communications, brands, websites, the whole thing. And Well's been around for a while. We've done just about everything. We also have a new arm called Featherlight, and this is something that we're offering to local first businesses. It's just coming out of the pilot phase. We have had a lot of small businesses come to us in the past 5-6 years, and they ask us for a website. We give them a quote for a website, and they look at it and go, no, I can't afford that. And that's fair. I mean, there's no question that a firm like Well is expensive for a lot of small businesses, and it's a real investment. And so we created Featherlight to try to get around that. And what Featherlight does is creates affordable monthly subscription-based websites that are custom created for your business and that you actually own. So unlike Squarespace, we are in a similar price point, except that we build it, you don't. It's custom instead of stock, and you own it, we don't. So if you ever decide that we're not doing our job, you can take that website and walk and host it with any commercial host. But after a few years of piloting it with dozens of websites, we've found that people absolutely love the service. And so it's time to bring it to more businesses in the West Michigan area. And yeah, so if you're interested, let us know. We'd love to chat with you about that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think one of the other pieces that Tyler shared with us as well about that is the custom updates that go along with it. I don't know if you mentioned that piece, Tyler, but that if people are using that service month to month, Well or Featherlight will also continue to update your content in that space.
Yeah, that's right. And thanks for bringing that up. It is totally on demand. So you technically don't have to lift a finger if you don't want to. You can just talk to your personal consultant and they take care of the rest. So, hey, I need to update my bio. Hey, I need to add a product. It's as simple as that. And so we've tried to make it as usable and as personalized as we can for small businesses while maintaining an incredibly competitive price point. And people who have used it so far really love it. So we're really stoked about it. And I would love to, yeah, I'd love to bring it to more businesses around here. So,
well, speaking of that, what is the best way for a business to get in touch with Well Design and the Image Shop if they're interested in following up on any of these pieces and or using the services that you just mentioned?
We are available at theimageshop.com, 2 P's and an E. If you Google the Image Shop, we should be #1. That's my job. So if we're not #1, I have some work to do. Phone calls, email, chats. I mean, literally however you want to connect with us, we're there for.
Awesome.
And Well Design is just welldesignstudio.com. And I think we have a pretty good search presence too. I will have to check in with our person about that. If you want to talk about Featherlight too, you can go to getfeatherlight.com. That's Light. Or if you head to Well, anyone at Well can help you with Featherlight as well. So just reach out. There's some phone numbers right on the site, and we're happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There's one question that came through. Yeah. One question that came through: what really should small businesses need to be doing with our Facebook site? Preparation for the iOS 14 requirements.
This is a deep question, Sylvia. You've gone very deep on this. So I think you're beyond 101 or you're trying to get there. We heard about this last fall and we did a lot of reading into it. And I think there's a lot of fear surrounding this. The effects are definitely there, right? But for what we see, it's mostly in tracking. So if you're not super familiar with what Sylvia's question is, she's really wondering, like, there's the new privacy updates coming out with iOS 14, which is for Apple devices. And that's affecting Facebook's ability to deliver ads and track results, because once someone clicks through an ad on Facebook, iOS privatizes that experience, and now you can't see what that customer's doing. For a high-level marketer, you know, above 101, that's like valuable stuff. That's like what we do. So we've just lost visibility into that whole process. So again, looking at your other data, knowing where your customers come from, gets back to that whole conversation we were having. That can inform iOS 14. And Facebook's a pretty powerful company. I'm assuming they're going to hopefully solve this problem soon. Tyler, do you know?
I don't know. I think that right now they're doing some really heavy lobbying. That's why you're seeing this massive ad buy from Facebook with the small business owners saying, like, hey, you're killing our business to Apple. And I think that there's a tinge of desperation in it, just because Apple is, if Facebook's a powerful company, Apple is an even more powerful company, and they command the operating software. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to wait a little bit to see how it shakes out. And until, as we get to that preparation for iOS 14, and as we think about how we approach that for Facebook advertising, it is true that the power of Facebook advertising is in the level of tracking and the level of granularity that you can get in terms of that tracking. And I don't know that I have a really satisfying answer for that at the moment. Besides, we're going to kind of see how it shakes out. We're doing research on it internally, but it's not a done deal yet. Like Zach said, Facebook's a huge company, and there's a lot of pushback in there for that privacy stuff. So I'm afraid I don't have a super satisfying answer for you either.
Well, also a vast majority of the world still uses Android as their number 1 operating system. So there's always that, right?
There you go. There you go. There's that.
It's true.
Whether Google will follow suit, we'll see. But I think that, yeah, I think it's one of those things that, you know, we'll kind of see how it shakes out, and you kind of have to see in the real world what's the effect before you can make some decisions about how do we roll with those punches. But if there's one thing we've proven in 2020, we can all roll with the punches. So
That is the truth.
Well said.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This is a great question and a great, so many great resources that came out of this conversation too. So again, we will be posting this to Local First blog so people can either rewatch this, watch this for the first time, and access some of those resources that everyone has shared. We'll be sure to link as well to the services provided by the Image Shop, Well Design, and Featherlight, so folks can follow up with that as well. And if it's okay to share resources out directly to your emails as well, so folks can just get in touch with all of you and ask some questions if they have further questions. But we really appreciate your time, and attendees, thank you all for coming and asking such good questions as well. Enjoy the rest of your days, guys. It is just beautiful and sunny out there, so I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
absolutely. Thanks.